"Grandma, get out of here now!" The terrified whisper from my grandson Ethan, just 5 years old, cut through the joyful buzz of the wedding reception like a sharp knife. We were sitting at the main table in the elegantly decorated ballroom of a Los Angeles hotel, celebrating my son David's second wedding. I, Amelia, at 68 years old, should have been beaming, but a strange sense of apprehension had been with me since the ceremony began. Ethan, my precious ray of sunshine, squeezed my hand with unusual force for a child, his blue eyes wide with fear, fixed on something under the table. "What is it, my love? What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm as my heart began to race. He shook his head frantically, unable to speak, and pointed with a trembling finger to the floor. "Didn't you see what's under the table?" My curiosity mixed with a pang of panic. I leaned over, trying to see what had disturbed my grandson so much. What I saw made me freeze. It wasn't a toy, nor an animal, nor even something that could be easily explained. It was a small, dark wooden box, slightly ajar, and from within it peered something that shouldn't have been there, something that seemed to defy the logic and peace of that day. The air seemed to thin, the sound of music and laughter became distant. My mind, which had just been wandering about David's happiness, was now on high alert. That object hidden under the tablecloth seemed to carry a sinister energy, a promise of misfortune. If you've ever felt that fate was about to play a cruel trick, or if you've had a premonition that came true in the worst way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your empathy will help me tell the rest of this story. My life, Creator, has always been dedicated to my son, David. From the day he was born 42 years ago, he became the center of my universe. I raised him with all the love and sacrifice a mother can offer, especially after his father, my late husband John, left us too soon. I worked tirelessly as a nurse in a Chicago hospital, often doing 2 shifts to ensure David had everything he needed, and then some. I remember sleepless nights, sewing his Halloween costumes, helping him with complex school projects, or simply listening to his teenage worries. My greatest pride was watching him grow into an intelligent, kind, and ambitious young man. When David first married Sarah, a woman who seemed perfect, I felt all my efforts had been worth it. They had Ethan, my precious grandson, and for a while our family seemed complete. But fate, or perhaps wrong choices, intervened. David and Sarah's marriage crumbled amidst disagreements and heartache, leaving deep scars on all of us, especially Ethan, who was only 2 at the time. I was there for David, as always, offering my shoulder and my home, helping him rebuild his life and be a present father to Ethan. Now David was marrying again, to Emily. She was a charming woman, a few years younger than David, and seemed to bring a new light into his life. I wanted to believe that this time would be different, that David's happiness would be lasting, but the past had taught me to be cautious. That object under the table, pointed out by Ethan, stirred an old anxiety in me, a premonition that something was terribly wrong. I had promised myself I would protect David and Ethan from any pain, and the sight of that mysterious object rekindled the lioness in me that I had always been for my family. Still paralyzed by the fear in Ethan's eyes and the sight of the mysterious box, I forced myself to act. Under the guise of picking up something that had fallen, I discreetly leaned under the table, feeling the tablecloth brush my face. The box was there, slippery to the touch, as if it had been handled recently. My heart pounded, a drum in my ears as my trembling fingers reached for it. It was heavier than I expected. I carefully pulled it out, keeping it hidden from the sight of the other guests who laughed and chatted animatedly, oblivious to the drama unfolding just inches from them. When the box was in my lap, protected by the tablecloth, I could examine it better. It was made of oak wood, with intricate carvings and an antique bronze clasp. What Ethan had seen, and what caused me such shock, was a photograph. An old yellowed photograph, partially sticking out of the box. With sweaty hands, I pulled the photo out completely. It was an image of David, still a boy, perhaps 10 years old, next to a woman I didn't recognize. But it wasn't the woman who disturbed me. It was what the woman held in her arms, a baby. A baby who, by the date written on the back of the photo, had been born even before David met Sarah, his first wife. My mind reeled. David had never mentioned having a child before Ethan. Who was that woman? And more importantly, who was that baby? The photo wasn't there by chance. Someone had placed it there on that significant day with a clear intention, an intention that, I feared, was not good at all. I looked at Ethan, who was now watching me with a mixture of curiosity and relief, as if he knew I had discovered something important. The innocence in his eyes gave me the strength to continue. I needed to unravel that mystery, not just for David, but for Ethan, to protect the peace of our family. With the photograph in my hands, hidden under the tablecloth, the world around me seemed to spin in slow motion. David's smile, Emily's beauty, the guests' joy. Everything became a distant blur. My mind, previously focused on the celebration, was now in a whirlwind of questions. Who was that woman? Who was that baby? And why was this photo here, on this day, in this place? The date on the back, Springfield, IL 1995, confirmed that the baby had been born years before David met Sarah, Ethan's mother. I looked at David, my son, who was laughing and toasting with his new wife, and a wave of emotions washed over me: love, concern, and a pang of anger that he had never told me about this. But it wasn't the time for a confrontation, not on his wedding day. I needed answers, and I needed them discreetly. My eyes scanned the ballroom, looking for any face that might have a connection to David's past in Springfield. I saw some distant relatives, childhood friends, but no one who seemed to fit the scene in the photo. Ethan, sensing my tension, squeezed my hand again. "Grandma, are you okay?" he asked, his small voice bringing me back to reality. I forced a smile, trying to reassure him. "I'm fine, my love. Just thinking about how happy your father is." But inside, I was on high alert. The wooden box, now empty, was back under the table. I needed to take it with me, along with the photo. It was the only proof that something was wrong. The party continued, but for me, the celebration had turned into a silent investigation. I was a mother on a mission, determined to unravel the secret that threatened my son's happiness and my grandson's peace. The reception dragged on, and every minute felt like an eternity. I couldn't relax. The image of the photo and the conversation with Mrs. Albright replayed in my mind. I needed a moment alone, away from the noise and curious glances. Under the pretext of going to the restroom, I moved away from the table. In the hallway, I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. The wooden box was in my purse, and I felt the need to examine it again, to look for any detail that might have gone unnoticed. As I waited in line for the restroom, my eyes fell on a small side table, where there was a guest list. It was a printed list, with the names of those present and their respective tables. On an impulse, I picked it up. I started flipping through it, looking for names that might have some connection to Springfield or to the date 1995. And then my gaze stopped on a name, Eleanor Vance. Next to the name, in parentheses, was the city of origin, Springfield, IL. My heart skipped a beat. Eleanor Vance. The name meant nothing to me, but the city. It was the same as in the photo. I looked at the list again, and I noticed that Eleanor Vance was sitting at table 12, a table further away, near the emergency exit. Mrs. Albright and her mysterious companion were at table 1. Could Eleanor be the woman in the photo? Or someone who knew the woman in the photo? The coincidence was too great to ignore. I needed to find her. I needed to talk to her. That wedding, which should have been a day of joy, was turning into a stage for the revelation of a secret that could shake David's life forever. The truth was beginning to unfold, and I was determined to follow every clue, no matter how painful it might be. With the guest list in hand, my eyes scanned the ballroom, looking for table 12. My heart pounded, a mixture of nervousness and determination. I spotted her. A woman with neatly cut gray hair wearing an elegant emerald green dress, sitting alone, observing the party with a melancholic expression. It was Eleanor Vance. I took a deep breath, adjusted my posture, and walked towards her, feeling the weight of the photograph in my purse. "Excuse me, Eleanor Vance?" I asked, my voice sounding firmer than I felt. She turned. Her blue eyes, curiously similar to Ethan's, met mine. A slight frown creased her brow. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" she replied with a soft accent that reminded me of the American Midwest. "My name is Amelia. I'm David's mother, the groom. I need to show you something." I sat in the empty chair beside her, taking the photograph from my purse carefully. Eleanor took the photo and her eyes widened. The blood seemed to drain from her face, leaving her pale. Her lips trembled slightly. Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "I found it under the main table with my grandson. It's from Springfield, 1995, isn't it?" I insisted, observing every nuance of her reaction. She nodded slowly, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Yes, it's from Springfield, and this is me." She pointed to the woman in the photo. "And this is my son, Michael." My world stopped. Michael, not David. But then, who was the baby David was holding? Eleanor, her voice choked with emotion, began to tell her story. "David and I dated in college, in Springfield. It was a summer romance, intense, but naive. I got pregnant. David was young, scared. He didn't want a child at that time. He didn't want it to interfere with his career plans in New York. He asked me to have an abortion." My breath hitched. "David? My David? I couldn't. I love that baby. So, I left him. I left him with my sister, who lived in a neighboring state and couldn't have children. She raised him as her own. David never knew I kept the baby." "But what about the photo?" I asked, confused. "David never held Michael. He never met him." Eleanor looked at me with deep sadness. "That photo, it was taken by my sister. She wanted me to have a keepsake. She told me David was visiting her family, unaware that Michael was there. He was such a beautiful baby, and David, he looked so natural holding him. My sister thought that maybe if he saw the baby, he would change his mind. But David never changed. He went on with his life, married Sarah, had Ethan, and Michael grew up without knowing David was his biological father." "But why is this photo here now?" I inquired, the missing piece of the puzzle still eluding me. Eleanor hesitated, looking at the main table where Emily and her mother were laughing. I don't know. I came to the wedding because my sister, Michael's adoptive mother, convinced me. She said it was time for David to know the truth, but I didn't expect this. She pointed to the wooden box. "This box. It's the same one my sister used to keep Michael's few mementos. She died a few months ago, and Michael found it. He's here, Amelia. He's here at this wedding." The revelation hit me like lightning. It wasn't David who had a secret, but Emily and her family who seemed to have a plan. The shock of Eleanor's revelation was immense. Michael, the son David never knew he had, was there, somewhere in that ballroom, and the box, the photo, they weren't just mementos, they were pieces of a much larger game. "Michael is here?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Eleanor nodded, her eyes fixed on the main table. "He came with the intention of confronting David, of demanding recognition, but he didn't know that Emily's family, they sought him out beforehand." Eleanor revealed that Mrs. Albright, Emily's mother, had discovered Michael through a private investigation. She knew David had an illegitimate son and saw an opportunity. Mrs. Albright promised Michael that if he came to the wedding and caused a scandal, she would help him get a share of David's fortune. She wanted to destabilize David, perhaps even annul the marriage, so Emily could have full control over him and his assets. The photo and the box were part of her plan, so Michael would have proof, and so the scandal would be public. Rage washed over me. It wasn't just a secret. It was a cruel manipulation, a plan to destroy David's life and consequently, Ethan's peace. Emily, with her captivating smile, was an accomplice. Mrs. Albright, with her ambition, was the mastermind behind it all. I looked at David, who was still smiling, oblivious to the web of lies surrounding him. I couldn't allow this. My son deserved the truth and justice. "Where is Michael now?" I asked Eleanor, my voice charged with a new determination. "He's at the hotel bar waiting for the right moment to act," she replied. I stood up. The lioness in me awakened. There would be no scandal, not in the way Emily and her mother planned. I, Amelia, at 68 years old, would see justice served, but in my own way. I would protect my son, my grandson, and the truth. If you believe that the truth always finds a way and that justice can be sweet, even when unexpected, leave your comment, like, and subscribe to the channel to find out how Amelia uncovered this plan and protected her family. With renewed determination, I left Eleanor at table 12 and headed to the hotel bar. My eyes scanned the room, looking for someone who fit Michael's description. A man in his 40s with Eleanor's eyes, and perhaps the same dimple on his chin that I had seen in the photo of Augusto and Isabella in one of the scripts I analyzed. I spotted him. Sitting alone, a glass of whiskey in hand, he watched the dance floor with an expression of hurt and contained anger. His intensely blue eyes were unmistakably Eleanor's. I approached, my heart pounding. "Michael?" I asked, my voice soft but firm. He turned abruptly, surprised. "Yes? Who are you?" I sat on the stool next to him. "My name is Amelia. I'm David's mother." His eyes widened and the anger on his face intensified. "So you're the woman who raised the man who abandoned my mother and denied my existence." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. "I understand your anger, Michael, but things are more complicated than they seem, and you are being manipulated." He laughed bitterly. "Manipulated? I have proof. I have my mother's story, and I have the box Mrs. Albright gave me with the photo of the father who abandoned me." "Mrs. Albright also gave me a box," I said, taking mine from my purse and showing him the photo. "But this photo, Michael, is not of David with you. It's of David with a baby who is not you. And the woman Mrs. Albright introduced to you as your biological mother, Eleanor, is sitting at table 12. She told me the truth." Michael's eyes widened again, but this time with confusion. "Mrs. Albright and Emily are using you, Michael. They want to destroy David for their own gain. You are a pawn in their game, not a victim seeking justice." The seed of doubt had been planted. The confusion on Michael's face gave way to cold fury. "They used me?" he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. "They promised me justice, recognition. They promised a scandal, Michael, and you would be the pawn. David deserves the truth, but not like this, not with your dignity and Ethan's being trampled." I explained Mrs. Albright's and Emily's plan, the private investigation, the intention to destabilize David. Michael listened, his fists clenched, his anger now directed at the right people. "I'm going to confront them," he said, standing up. "Not alone," I replied, holding his arm. "We'll do this together, and David needs to hear the truth from me, not from a stranger he's never met." We walked towards the main table. The music was loud, guests were dancing. David and Emily were in the center of the dance floor, smiling for photos. When David saw me with Michael, his happy expression turned to surprise. "Mom, who is this?" Before I could answer, Mrs. Albright, who had been watching us from her table, noticed Michael's presence and panic took over her face. She tried to approach, but I intercepted her. "Mrs. Albright, we have some things to discuss." David, confused, looked from me to Michael, then to Emily, who now also seemed apprehensive. "David," I said, my voice clear and firm, cutting through the party noise, "this is Michael, and he is your son." Silence fell over the dance floor. David paled, and Emily, beside him, let out a small, muffled gasp. The music stopped. All eyes were on us. The ballroom plunged into an awkward silence. David, his face pale, looked at Michael, then at me, and finally at Emily, who was trying to hide her shock. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice trembling. It was then that I, with the help of Michael and Eleanor, who joined us, unraveled the entire plot. Eleanor explained her past with David, the pregnancy, the decision to give Michael to her sister. Michael, in turn, revealed Mrs. Albright's manipulation, the promises of money, and the intention to use him to destroy the marriage. David was in shock. Mrs. Albright tried to deny it. Emily tried to justify herself, but the evidence and the testimony of Michael and Eleanor were irrefutable. The truth, however painful, finally came out. David, with a dignity that filled me with pride, looked at Emily. "I cannot marry someone who plans such cruelty against my family. Our wedding is canceled." Mrs. Albright and Emily were escorted out of the ballroom under the shocked gazes of the guests. That day, David didn't marry Emily, but he gained a son. Michael, though initially driven by anger, found in David not just a biological father, but a man willing to acknowledge him and build a relationship. In the following months, David and Michael began to grow closer, with the help of Eleanor and, of course, Ethan, who quickly grew fond of Uncle Michael. I, Amelia, watched it all with a full heart. That day, which began with the worst pain, turned into a new beginning. The family expanded in an unexpected but genuine way. Life, Creator, has these ironies. Sometimes the biggest challenges bring us the greatest blessings. That broken wedding paved the way for a stronger, more honest family with deeper bonds. The wooden box, once a symbol of secrecy and manipulation, now held the first photos of David, Michael, and Ethan together. If this story of twists and redemption touched your heart, leave your comment about what you would do in Amelia's place, like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that show the unbreakable strength of family ties.